Happy Monday to you. We have presenting today Danielle Hennis, who is the newest member of the Wake Tech faculty, and we are so glad to have her on board. She is very talented, and she's going to share a lot of what she knows about presenting with you today. So she and I talked a little bit in advance about this project and what you're doing and how you have to present at the end of the semester. So I'm going to be monitoring the chat. So if everybody would mute your microphone, you can put your messages in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand with the little icon at the top of the screen, we can call on you and you can unmute yourself and ask your question. But I'm going to yield the floor to Ms. Hennis. Thank you so much for being here. I know that this is a crazy time in the semester, and we definitely appreciate you taking time out to share with us today.
No, absolutely. I love talking about presentations. I work with clients a lot on presentations, both designing and creating. So this is, about 45 minutes of information that we're going to cover about presentations. We're not going to get into everything that you could possibly cover. So if there is something that we don't cover that you guys are putting in the Padlet now, we can definitely set up a time to meet after, or I can send out some resources for you guys to take a look at. But looking at what you guys are putting in there, I think we're going to cover most everything that you guys are nervous about and what you want to improve on. So I want to start with talking about how, before you create a presentation, you want to do an outline. So oftentimes when we create a presentation, we kind of just jump into PowerPoint, we put our notes on, and we'll just start typing in a slide or bring in pictures and just kind of put things in. And we don't take a step back and think about the planning process first. So making an outline for your presentation is the same as if you do thumbnails for a design, or you do an outline before you write an English paper. And you want to think about how much information you're putting in your presentation before you actually ever open up PowerPoint or Google Slides or Keynote. So I recommend that you never use more than 4 chunks of information. And what that means is that you can have like 4 sections, ideally 3, but 4 is the maximum. And the reason why is I want you to try and multiply 12 times 13 in your head. And when you have the answer, I want you to raise your hand. All right, got 1, 2. All right. Yeah, so we got a couple people who've gotten there. Excellent. You can put your hand back down. So the reason why some of you are still struggling with this is probably you haven't done mental math in a really long time, and that's okay. But also because you're using all 4 sections of your working memory. So to do 12 times 13 in your head, you have to first remember the numbers. I haven't written them down for you, so you have to think about them and remember them in one section of your working memory. And then you have to go back to when you were in 3rd grade or the last time you did multiplication in your head and think about the rules. How do you multiply 2 2-digit numbers? And most people will split them apart in some ways. So sometimes people will do 12 times 12 and then 12 times 1, or 12 times 10 and 2 times or 3 times 10, or whatever that happens to be, right? And you split them apart and then you sum them together. And so doing all this takes up all 4 spaces of your working memory. And you all are probably able to get to 156 if I gave you enough time to be able to do it. But it takes time, it takes energy, and it's also a little bit difficult, right? But if you're only presenting 4 chunks of information, your audience will still follow along with you. If you present more than 4 chunks, it's like asking your audience to do 129 times 347 in their head. Some people may be able to do that, but most people can't. And by asking your audience to do this, you're presenting them with cognitive overload, which is when you've ever been in a presentation or a meeting or a class and you start zoning out because it's just too much information at once. Your brain has reached cognitive overload, your working memory is full, and it doesn't want to forget anything that's in one of those spaces, and so it's stuck. So the first thing you want to think about is how much information you're presenting. And then you want to think about the order that you're presenting it. Oftentimes when we present information, we tell them what we're going to tell them, we tell them, and then we tell them what we told them, right? But our brain actually remembers in reverse. We remember what comes first and what comes last, and we tend to forget what's in the middle. So when you're presenting options to a client, when you're presenting information to a supervisor, you want to put whatever's most important first and last. And then the middle is still important, but it's less important than the other two. And then with your outline, you also want to think about only presenting one idea at a time. This is the biggest mistake I see people do. They fill their slides with information and they cram a bunch of information on there, whether that's images or charts or graphs or words. And they don't think about how your audience can only process one thing at a time as you're speaking about it. So take your outline that you created and take a look at, do you have 3 to 4 chunks with no more than 3 to 4 ideas within each chunk? And if not, then you need to change your chunks around so that you're able to keep that. And then you want chunk 1 and chunk 3 or chunk 4, however many chunks you have, to be the most important. And once you have that, you basically have a script for your presentation. And that script is going to help guide the presentation so that you are presenting information in a way that your audience is going to follow along. And so I want you to think about creating this presentation a bit more like creating a movie, right? So if you create a presentation that has images, it has stories, it's engaging, it's connecting with your audience, it's a lot more like creating a documentary than it is a document. Oftentimes we see slides that are documents as opposed to documentaries. So when you're creating your documentary, think about what goes into making a movie. Well, just like design, the first thing you need to think about is who is your target audience. So before you start creating anything, before you even start with the outline, you need to think about who is in the room, who is going to be in your audience. And that's important because, one, if you don't think about it, you're going to be designing for the wrong person. And two, you could make a lot of mistakes if you don't think about who's your audience. So for example, Catwoman, if you ever saw the movie from the 90s, has a 9% score on Rotten Tomatoes. It had a $100 million budget and made $88 million. So it lost $12 million. And part of the reason is that the producers didn't think about the audience. They changed the name of the character, they changed the storyline, and so the fans who were really into Batman were upset and didn't want to see the movie. And so they didn't think about the audience when they created the movie. So I want you to take a moment and on a sheet of paper or on a Word document, I want you to write down who is in your audience for your presentation and think about what it is that they want, what it is that they need from you, what they're expecting, and what might make them resist your message, right? So all 4 of these you want to think about when you're creating a presentation. So if you're presenting to a client, you should know what they're going to expect from you, and you should know what might make them resistant. Those are kind of 2 of the biggest things that people typically don't think about. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes or so just to jot down some ideas.
Can you repeat the questions, please?
Sure. Can you see the screen?
Yes, I can now. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, I was behind.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure it was still sharing.
Something to throw out there for consideration is that in addition to your clients, you're going to have other people in this audience that we've discussed as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so you want to make sure you give those other people the right amount of information, right? Sometimes it's really easy to give them too much or too little information. And so you want to be thinking about everyone who might be in your audience.
After everyone shares their responses, I'll give you a little breakdown of the people who have in the past attended these. We'll compare notes.
Do you want to share that now? It might be helpful for people who are writing things down.
So as you know, Katie Gales knows pretty much everybody in the business community in Wake County. So in addition to your clients and the people who are supporting them, their family and their friends who are watching them launch this business, they're going to be people from the business community. We have fellow faculty members. Danielle hopefully will be in attendance. We also have people from our board of trustees. So, that's kind of a nice feather in our hat. Last year we had President Scott, or President, I'm sorry, Rawls, Scott Rawls. We used to have President Scott before he retired. It's a hard habit to break. He was at Wake Tech for a very long time. So, the college president is one of the people who attends these sort of presentations. So no pressure. So there also might be some potential clients there who think, okay, I'll see what kind of work these designers do, and I may reach out to them for some work for me.
Yeah, that's great to know. So I want you to spend some time thinking about this for your presentation, right? And for any presentation you do, you want to think about this. And so now that you know a bit more about who's in the audience, this might change some of the answers that you have. You might want to separate the different audiences even. So your client versus everyone else, or your client, faculty, and everyone else. Like you might decide that you want to do certain things for certain audience members. So if you want to take a screenshot of this slide or just write down the questions, I'd encourage you to do so you can have it for later. All right. So once you've thought about your audience, you want to think about how you hook your audience into your presentation. So remember we talked about people remember what comes first and what comes last? Well, that is true, but if you don't hook your audience from the beginning, then likelihood is it's going to be hard to catch them and keep them engaged throughout the whole presentation. So you want to start strong and think about how you can bring your audience in and make them interested and excited about your presentation from the very beginning. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. You can Google hooks for presentations and you'll come up with like 20 to 30 options. But what I really recommend is telling a story. So every movie script is a story, and your work that you've done so far is also a story. But you want to think about how you're telling the story. So one way that people typically tell stories is with the AAA method. So it's something like this. So I talked to my client and I created some thumbnails and I developed some roughs and some comps and I created a solution on the computer. And I tried that and I saw it really wasn't working well. And so I thought about it some more and came up with a solution. You've created and. It's a lot of ands that string things together, right? There's no conflict, there's no resolution, there's nothing that keeps the audience really engaged and wanting to know what happened. So a better way is to take the same idea, the same information, but just change the words that you're using, which forces you to create conflict and resolution. So if you use the ABT method, same information, but you create a story arc. So I worked with a client and talked about what the problem was they were trying to solve, and I went to work trying to solve it. But even after tons of thumbnails and roughs, I wasn't able to find the solution that worked. And so I had to go back to the drawing board and relook at my notes and roughs, and I found a different direction which better solves the problem. By doing this, you're putting in and, but, and therefore, or fill in the word that works best for you. So but can be however, therefore can be so, but you're creating a story arc. You're forcing yourself to create conflict and forcing yourself to create a resolution. And so by using the ABT method, you're using and to really set the background, the situation, the stage. Think about any movie that you watch. There's kind of 10 to 20 minutes of kind of that background entry page. And then you want to think about the conflict. So what is the conflict, the complication, what is causing issues? That's going to be your rising action. That's going to be what's causing people to be interested. And then your therefore is your resolution or your result. And so I want you to take a moment and think about how your current project can fit into the ABT method. What is the conflict that you've experienced? And maybe you don't have the resolution or result just yet, but you can think about this when you're creating your story in terms of how you're going to present your information. So I'll give you a couple minutes on that same sheet of paper or Word document. I want you to just write down some ideas that you have. All right, does anyone have any questions with the story arc, thinking about your audience, anything we've covered so far?
I know that there are teams out there who have gone through the situation, complication, and they're working on the resolution now. So think about how this applies to you.
Yeah, and if you're in the middle of it, you might not have the end of the story, and that's okay. But it is helpful to think about what can be your conflict. All right, so after you have your story, you've thought about the audience, you've created a hook, you want to have a way to think about yourself as an actor. So you're giving a presentation, and oftentimes this makes people nervous, right? It's one of the biggest fears that people have. And even if it doesn't make you nervous, it oftentimes can be a bit uncomfortable, and there's a lot riding on presentations a lot of times. So you want to feel more comfortable in the presentation. So in the chat, I want you to put if you have ever experienced any of these symptoms when you go into a situation that makes you nervous. You don't have to say what you've experienced, but if you've experienced any, just put yes. Yeah, most people have, right? Because this is your flight, fight, or freeze response. This is what happens when your body gets nervous. Basically, your sympathetic nervous system goes haywire and it says, oh no, we need to get out of here. We're going to send all of this blood to your muscles and we're going to tense them so that you're ready to fight or flee or freeze. And so if you've experienced these, you are normal. You are human. Congratulations. And you cannot make these go away, but what you can do is you can have specific ways of dealing with them that minimize them and allow you to get back on track. So we're going to talk about appearing confident, feeling confident, and being confident. And the first of which, appearing confident, is oftentimes very simple little changes that you can make. No one can see how you feel, right? And so it's about just shifting small little things so that you look and feel more confident when you're presenting. So the first thing is just knowing your content. And I'm going to pause sharing for a minute so you guys can actually see me larger, because I'm going to show you a couple things. So the first thing is just knowing your content, right? So you created your outline. You can use sticky notes if you are presenting and you don't have a way of looking at your computer necessarily for your notes. So with these, I recommend taking sticky notes and putting them next to your webcam. So that way it still looks like you're looking at the webcam, but you have the notes right there in front of you. If you do have a PowerPoint presentation that you're using, you can use presenter mode, which means that you can see the notes in front of you as long as you have another monitor, or you can do a section of the screen so your audience only sees the one section. And if you're sharing slides with other people, you can always have a Word document up with kind of a bulleted list. You don't want to be reading word from word what you want to say, because that typically turns people a bit robotic. But if you have notes so that you don't forget anything, it makes you feel a lot more comfortable. The second thing you want to think about is your posture. So I want you to do this with me. I want you to take your shoulders. I want you to squeeze them up by your ears and then squeeze them back so that your shoulder blades are kind of engaged, and then drop your shoulders.
I think we should all turn on our cameras and do this together.
Oh, that might make you feel nervous. If you feel comfortable with that, please do so. All right, yeah. So you are going to take your shoulders, squeeze them up by your ears, squeeze them back, and then drop them. And then I want you to pay attention to, yeah, there you go. So where that drops is your natural position. Oftentimes throughout the day, we tend to kind of slouch forward. We tend to kind of squeeze ourselves into weird positions on a chair. I constantly am pulling my knees up and turning myself into like a little circle, which is terrible for you ergonomically. It also, by doing this, forces you back into the position that's natural. And then I want you to pay attention to where your neck is. So typically, we tend to kind of jut our neck out a little bit, probably because we're self-conscious of a double chin or something. But if you actually put your neck where it should go, it's directly in line with your spine. So I want your ears to be over your shoulder. And then I want you to notice how tense your jaw is. Are you holding tension here? Oftentimes when we get nervous, if you're about to go on to present, you tend to like clench your jaw and hold tension here. So I want you to just try and relax your jaw and don't clench it together. And then just let your tongue kind of lay on the bottom of your mouth. So this does a couple things. One, it puts you in a relaxed posture. Two, it means that when you go to present, you have full range of your vocal range. So your diaphragm is not being squished by you like hunching over. It's allowing you to have more voice and more vocal tone control. So by doing this, you're kind of putting yourself in a better position to speak to your audience in a way that makes your voice not shaky, makes you prevent yourself from having shallow breathing, and it's just putting yourself in a better position. The next thing is if you're standing, I want you to put your feet directly beneath your hips. If you're sitting, I want you to make sure your feet are on the floor and your sit bones are balanced on the chair. And then I want you to notice if you're standing, make sure you're not, your knees are not completely locked, that you have a little bit of space. And if you're sitting, make sure that if you're on a swivel chair, you're not moving back and forth like this. When we get nervous, we tend to do these rocking motions. We'll either kind of like rock back and forth on our feet, or we'll rock back and forth in a chair, or we tend to take a pen and do this. We fidget, we pause, we pace, we sway. And these are all things that they comfort us, but they can be really distracting for the audience. So you want to make sure that you are balanced and that you're facing the camera at a 180 degrees. So you're completely parallel with the camera. Then the biggest thing is you want to be able to pause. So when you are nervous, you tend to speak faster, you tend to kind of blur your words together, And you tend to fill in the words that you're not saying with filler words like, like, you know, therefore, all those things. Filler words are not bad, right? They're not complete. It's not, you don't have to focus on completely cutting them out. It's okay to have some. The problem is when you use every other word as a filler word, you say, you know, like, it can be a bit distracting for the audience. So the way to fix this is to stop in between every sentence or every thought. So I'm going to put you into breakout rooms, maybe. Maybe I can't. Can you put them in breakout rooms, Ms. Osborne?
I've never done that before, but hey, we like to break things in this class, so we can do that. Well,
right.
I'm trying to figure that out. We do have a question in the chat.
Sure.
So is there a good alternative for this tip when you're presenting in person?
Are you talking about the notes for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're presenting in person, if you can have a monitor in front of you, you can still use presenter mode. It does become a bit harder. You can use note cards, so you can have little note cards that aren't sticky notes, like the little flashcards. You can have those and you can use them just to glance down at your notes. It's a little bit harder in person because you can't hide behind the computer, which is showing you your notes, right? But it is still possible, and it's okay to look at notes. It's completely okay. You can have notes in your hand, you can have notes on the floor, whatever you need. The idea is that you're just not reading things. So if you have your outline and that helps you to have it there, ideally you've practiced it enough that you feel comfortable with it, but you have it there as kind of a security blanket just in case you need it. Yeah.
How many groups do we want? How many breakout rooms
if we
would you prefer, Ms. Hennis?
2 people in each room, that would be ideal. So as you're doing that, what I want you to do is I want you to tell the other person in your room, tell them the ABT that you created of your presentation. It's okay if it's not finished, just kind of talk them through what you did. The purpose of this is 1, to practice the ABT, but 2, to practice pausing. So what I want you to do is when you go into the Teams, I want you to both turn on your video, and I want you to look at the other person, look at their face, say one idea, one sentence, one complete thought, and then stop talking and shift your eyes to your own face. And then say one complete thought and then stop talking and then shift your eyes back to the other person. So every time you finish a complete thought, you should be shifting your eyes over to the other person. If you find that really distracting because you're looking at yourself because there's only 2 of you in the room, you can count to 2 instead. So you say a complete thought, and then you say another complete thought, and then you say another one. And by doing this, you're going to minimize those filler words immensely. And it's also going to give you time to think of what you want to say next. Does anyone have any questions? All right.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start the rooms.
All right. Could you put Franthia in a room with 3 if possible? Because she said she's driving.
Oh goodness. Yes. Hold on.
Alyssa, you're going to tell the story that you did a couple minutes ago. Just kind of, you don't have to have it finished. Just kind of walk through the background of what you're going to be presenting on and if you have a conflict.
Okay. Alrighty. I think we've got it. Fingers crossed.
Let's see.
It's spinning. It's promising.
Oh, yep, I think it worked.
Okay. Sweet.
Am I in the wrong room?
Let's see. You should be in room 4.
Okay, I see it just popped up. Okay.
Yeah. Jerry, how are
Hey,
you?
I don't know why I went back to this room. Is there any way you could re-add me to the team 3? I was in team 3. I don't know how I jumped into here.
Okay. Let me see if I can invite you from there because you're still assigned to. It looks like you're still in that meeting. That's what it's saying, is that you're still in the meeting.
Oh, because well, my desktop does not have a camera, so I logged in on my phone,
Oh,
and
gotcha.
then on my phone it shows. Well, it took me back here. Hold on, let me see if I can find that room.
Whoops. I'm calling you from that room, so hopefully
Oh yeah,
it'll
I'll just
yeah.
accept that.
Miss Osborne, I think my room has some problem.
Okay.
My partner was not responding.
Okay. Who's your partner?
Alyssa Noel?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's see what we can do. It says she's in the meeting.
Yeah, she was in the meeting. I opened my microphone, but there was no response, so I
Okay.
don't know what happened.
Let's see. She may, well, it wouldn't matter if she had a camera or didn't have a camera. Let's see. I'm going to remove her from or I'm going to see if I can call her about that. Or you and I can just talk about it. So,
Okay.
um,
Where's my, oh, it's right here.
yeah. Okay, so let's hear it. You've got your and, your but, and your therefore.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how it's gonna look like, but I'm gonna try my best. So, we had a campaign or branding campaign for a food truck, and we wanted to work on a full branding campaign, including websites, logo redesign, and menu design. But the client had some issues back and forth with the redesigning and the communication between both of us. And therefore, after a lot of communication and meetings, we managed to create a full branding campaign. We're still working on it. And we have a website that's under construction. And we're designing a menu too.
Super. Well, and you had the added, instead of saying there was a communication problem, you might say there was an unfortunate event where the truck was out of service.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, it was out of service, to be honest.
Yeah, so that's a conflict that's nobody's fault, so that's kind of a more positive spin on it.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So
I totally forgot about
I
that.
heard about that. I'm so sorry. Yeah. All righty. Well, I think we're supposed to go back into the meeting room now. So, we want to close the rooms, but well done. I don't worry about you presenting. You're used to that. So
Yeah, I like presenting.
Cool. Well, you're going to be tapped. You will be. So, all right. I'll see you back in the other classroom.
All right. See you soon.
And we're back. A few of us are back. So, Alyssa, I think there was a hiccup, and Mustafa said that he wasn't able to see you in the room. So.
Oh, I saw Miles.
Alyssa Noel.
I was
the other Alyssa.
Yeah, another Alyssa.
The other Alyssa.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You good partner?
All right, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you were able to practice pausing to kind of eliminate some of those filler words. And I worked with Taylor, and after doing it for 2 times, he basically eliminated all of his filler words. So I know this is something that you can do. It just requires a little bit of practice. I realize that you guys haven't practiced this story yet, so it is a bit uncomfortable, but hopefully before your presentation, the team and you will be able to get together and practice it. So I want to focus on feeling confident, because once you appear confident, you focus on how you look to the other people. Oftentimes that feeling of flight, fight, or freeze, that forgetting what you're going to say, feeling unable to speak, rapid, shallow breath, your heart rate races, your blood pressure rises, you feel panicky, that's still there. So you can't fight it completely, but what you can do is you can kind of retrain your brain. So your brain has 2 parts. You have the cortex, which is your rational decision-making, thought-making side. And then you have your amygdala, which is the emotional center of your brain, and it controls your 5 senses. So your amygdala is basically your watchdog. The amygdala is there basically making sure that if any given time, if it sees, smells, hears, tastes, touches anything that gives it alarm, it's going to automatically turn into watchdog mode. And we think a lot of times that as the cortex, we're kind of in control of the amygdala, that we can tell the amygdala to like just sit and stay and listen. But at any point in time when there's danger, the amygdala goes into attack mode, and you can't control that. But what you can do is you can focus on what the amygdala likes. So the amygdala is faster than you, it's directly in line with your emotions, and at any point in time when it sees or hears or feels something that makes it feel like it's in danger, it's going to react in less than 1/10 of a second. And so oftentimes you're reacting before you even realize what caused you to react. So instead of thinking about how you're going to tell yourself that you're okay, focus on how you can calm your amygdala down. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do this, but the first way that I find really helpful is to do a body scan. So I want you to close your eyes with me, and hopefully none of you are exceptionally nervous, but you just presented in front of people, so you might be feeling a little nervous. And I want you to start from your face. So focus on your eyebrows. Is your brows furrowed? Are you holding tension in your jaw? Are you holding tension in your neck? And just kind of scan through your body and see if you're holding tension, and release the tension. You can also do the opposite. So in a presentation, especially if I start to get nervous, it's helpful to start with your toes. Squeeze your toes together and relax them. And then squeeze your calves together and relax them. And then squeeze your quads together and relax them. And you go up to the point in which the audience can see. So if you're sitting, oftentimes that's kind of your ab area, and then go back down again. And that squeezing and relaxing focuses the amygdala on relaxing and focusing on telling it that it's okay. Another thing you can do is belly breathing. So I want you to put your hand on your chest and another hand on your stomach. And first, just notice, where are you breathing from? Is your chest going up and down, or is your stomach going up and down? If you are feeling safe, typically it comes from your belly. If you're feeling nervous, it typically comes from your chest. So first you can do is focus your breath coming from your belly. So before a presentation, take note of this, and then I want you to breathe in for the count of 4, hold for the count of 2, breathe out for the count of 8, hold for the count of 2 again. So we're going to do this together. So breathe in through your belly, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, hold, 2, in, 2, 3, 4, 5, oh, sorry, out, hold, 2, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I don't understand what belly breathing. Oh.
Say it one more time.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was wondering.
Yeah,
I was wondering about the belly breathing. So, how do you breathe through your belly?
Yeah, so if you notice that you're breathing from your chest, I
Uh-huh.
want you to really focus on breathing in and expanding your diaphragm. So focus on your stomach
Okay.
and just focus on bringing the breath in and out through your stomach.
Okay.
And if you're breathing from your chest, all you need to do is focus on breathing from your stomach. Don't focus on the counting. Because if you're breathing from your chest, it means you're already nervous, and it means that your amygdala is already kind of in alert.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So both the belly breathing and then the counting breathing can calm your amygdala back down. You can also do things like mindfulness, visualizations, you can walk beforehand. All those things will kind of tell your amygdala that you're okay and calm it back down. And then oftentimes we kind of have this negative self-talk that we have in all parts of our life, right? Before a presentation, oftentimes people will tell themselves that they're going to fail or make a mistake, or they're going to forget what they're going to say. And so I want you to take one moment and just write down on that same sheet of paper or Word document what your normal self-talk is before a presentation or before a big project like this. So oftentimes I'll see things like this. You can't handle it, you're worried about forgetting something, you're worried about making a mistake. And the idea is that once you have calmed your amygdala down, so you've done belly breathing, you've done muscle relaxation, visualization, mindfulness, exercise, whatever works best for you, then you can focus on the negative thoughts. But you can't focus on the negative thoughts until your amygdala is calm. So once you've done the amygdala calming exercises, then focus on telling your cortex, the other part of your brain, that these are feelings and they're not facts. I guarantee you there's been some point in your life where this wasn't true. You did a presentation and you didn't make a mistake. You did a presentation and you didn't forget what you wanted to say. You could handle it. And so remind yourself that even though these thoughts are terrifying and they feel really real, that they're not necessarily facts and that you don't have to be perfect. Your goal is to get a message across and not necessarily to do it perfectly. So think about what your counter response is to your negative thoughts. Tell yourself that you do know your ideas and you are competent, that your amygdala might think that you need to be protected, but you have the tools to calm it down and you are going to remember. You have notes, you have tools in front of you to help. And that there is no failing. No one's going to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to communicate your message. And then lastly, we have being confident. So to be confident is a combination of appearing and feeling, and it's also taking time to do the practice and creating a routine. So before you do the presentation, you should have practiced this several times, ideally with the group, and ideally in the same state in which you will be doing the presentation. So if you're going to do it on Zoom or on Teams, you want to be practicing on that platform and recording yourself and watching it. You want to make sure that you bring the team together so that you're all practicing beforehand. The presentation should never be the first time that you're doing it. Make sure that you know what your relaxation routine is. So before the presentation, you want to have your breathing that you're doing, you want to have a walk that you're doing, whatever it is that calms your amygdala down, you've done it before the presentation. And then you want to make sure you have your setup properly. So I really recommend people have water or non-caffeinated tea in front of them, just because people tend to shake when they get nervous and caffeine makes that worse. The reason why I find this really helpful is one, you talk, you get dry mouth, but two, if you forget what you're ever going to say, you just bought yourself at least 5 seconds. And it seems normal. So at any point in time, if you have that water in front of you, or you have tea, you have the ability to give yourself that space to remind yourself of what you wanted to say. For the actual setup, make sure that your camera is at or above eye level. So either use a stack of books, use a laptop riser, use something to bring your camera up so that you're not looking down at it. Make sure that the light in front of you is one in front of you. So if you have a window, it's in front. If you have a lamp, it's in front. If you have to have a window behind you, make sure you have enough light in front of you that it will make your face lit up as opposed to backlit. And if you have one of those Pixar lamps, make sure it's diffused, so it's pointing at the wall or the ceiling, so you don't have a spotlight on your face. And make sure that you're paying attention to the background. Ideally, you want it to be plain or staged so that you're not focusing on, the audience isn't focusing on the background and what might be distracting them. And then you want to make sure that you have backups available. So ideally, have your cell phone on silent. But that way, if you lose Wi-Fi, you can bring in a hotspot really quickly, that you have your files saved on OneDrive or on a flash drive somewhere. And if something happens, I did a presentation the other day and my mic died in the middle of the presentation. So I had three choices. I could feature it, which means basically that you are going to tell the audience what's wrong and go into a story about why it happened. Oftentimes, if we have the wrong PowerPoint up or we have something that makes us nervous, more nervous than we already are, we tend to talk about it and tell a story. But it's better to fix it and forget it. So if it's something the audience is going to be aware of, fix it. If it's something that they don't know, forget it. And only feature it if you can turn it into part of the presentation or make it humorous and it's not distracting. So try and focus on fixing it and forgetting it. We briefly talked about your negative self-talk. Oftentimes, some of us, when we tend to be a bit more pessimistic or realistic, we'll kind of get in our head with that negative self-talk. Something that will kind of re-engage the positive side of your brain is to play yourself positive music or do imagery or visualizations, because it tends to be the left side of the brain that has the negative thoughts. And so if you can engage it with visualizations or music, then it kind of takes over those negative thoughts and focuses it on something else. And then lastly, you want to believe it. There's a TED Talk by Amy Cuddy. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it. She talks about power posing, which is basically what we do naturally when we've achieved something. So you're crossing the finish line, you make yourself big, you climb the top of the mountain, you kind of spread out, or if you're Wonder Woman, you have your hands on your hips. And power posing for 2 minutes before a fake interview led to 25% less stress hormone, 20% more dominance hormone, and the people who watched the interviews afterwards all chose those candidates that power posed ahead of time to be hired for the job. So I recommend before you go into the presentation, hold a power pose for 2 minutes, make yourself big. It may feel silly, but I promise you it makes a difference. And ultimately, there's a lot of research that talks about faking it till you make it is actually quite true. Self-perception theory in psychology, if you act a specific way, it tends to leading to feeling that way. So before you go into a presentation, tell yourself you're excited. It may sound silly, but when they did a study and they had people say, I'm excited or I'm calm, the people who said I'm excited were judged later blindly to be 17% more persuasive, 10% more competent, 15% more confident, and 12% more persistent. So by applying all of these, I hope that you appear, feel, and you are more confident. You're not worried about what your amygdala is doing because you have the tools to calm it back down, focus on communicating your message, and hopefully you're going to win your own version of that Golden Globe. Thank you guys. I have a ton of references if you're interested, and I know we're almost at time, but I'm happy to stay on and answer any questions that you guys have.
Will that the PowerPoint, will that be in the chat so we can look at it, or no?
The PowerPoint, I can save it as a PDF
The
so you guys can
recording-
take a look at it. Sorry, what were you gonna say? Yeah.
I'm sorry, I talked over you. I didn't mean to.
No, you're okay.
The recording is going to be in Teams. So if you want to just go back through the recording and review, the PowerPoint will be part of the recording. So
Okay.
thank you so much. It was interesting as you were going through your presentation and you mentioned practicing. That's one of the assignments that's due on Wednesday, is that you're all to break into your teams and practice your presentation, record it, post it for review by everybody in the class. So make sure that you check that out in the lesson 11 materials. So it was as if you had read my mind.
Awesome. Yeah, and if you guys have any questions about any of this, so I know a lot of times people do get really nervous and they want other tips. I have other ones that I can give you if what I suggested doesn't help, because different things work better for different people. So feel free to send me an email if you have any questions.
Can you put your email in the chat?
Yeah, I definitely can.
Thank you. And something else I wanted to add was that I actually find it endearing when somebody's a little bit nervous, because that means that they care about what they're presenting. And also, if they stumble over their words a little bit, I think, hey, they're just like me. They're not perfect either. And so don't sweat it when those things happen. And all of you have been in my classes enough to know that sometimes my words just don't tumble out the way I intend for them to. So but the point, we get the point across, and as long as you're sincere, that's what's going to matter. And you've been with these clients the entire semester, and you've worked with each other the entire semester, so you're going to be comfortable with the material, and that gives you a leg up.
Yeah, and we're all human. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. We're all rooting for you.
Yep. All righty, any questions? You've gotten some very nice compliments in the chat. Okay, so someone has their hand raised.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So for this assignment specifically, so it's due Wednesday. Do we have to, you said we have to do it Wednesday, or it's like just within today, tomorrow, and Wednesday, like to do the assignment?
Today, tomorrow, and Wednesday.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been posted for a while, so there's not a whole lot of wiggle room. But yeah, this is not going to be like a slick production. This is going to be you getting together with your team, designating one person to hit record, and posting that recording. And so it's okay. This is a practice run. What we're looking for is not I'm slumping. I'm not taking. I caught myself in the small screen. So what we're looking for is not, absolute perfection. It's just that when you're going through the presentation, everybody needs to introduce themselves. If one person is the designated person to be the presenter, that's fine. I would prefer that everybody contribute, but you must, at the start of the presentation, at the very least, you have to appear on screen to introduce yourself. But as far as this practice run, this is just to see if you're missing one of the components that sort of the steps, going through the ABT, the story arc. If something doesn't make sense when somebody else is watching the presentation, because we tend to think about things that we know as things everybody else knows. So it may be that when you're going through the presentation, you just assume your audience is going to know about Dominican food, for example, or what doulas do, so that might be where members of the class, your peers, speak up and say, well, I don't understand what a doula does, and you didn't really go into enough detail about that. That's a random example, but this is what we're aiming for with the practice, and just become more comfortable.
So the topic for this presentation would just have to do with like closely related to our client right now, just like what we're dealing with, like with whoever we're making deliverables for.
If you were called on today to present your project, that's what you would be presenting in this recording, in this practice run.
Okay.
So
I'm just trying to make sure.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking clarifying questions. So yes, if the board just happened to call you up and say, hey, the timeline has been moved up, be ready to present. What would you present today? And that happens, doesn't it, Ms. Hennis?
Yeah, it does.
It's that's a lot of fun. But hey, you roll with the punches. You get it done. No, it doesn't have to be finished. Just sort of, a snapshot in time. Because I know that a lot of you are waiting to hear back from your clients on specific details. So, that's it's more a snapshot of where you are and just practicing your presentation, discussing, what are we going to do? Who's going to create the slides? Who's going to speak first? Are you going to go over your part of the deliverables, or, something else to keep in mind before you go into the final presentation is somebody may drop their laptop. Somebody may spill coffee on their laptop. You all need to be familiar enough with the entire presentation that if somebody has to drop out, if somebody's Wi-Fi is down, you can pick up where they left off. So something to think about. No pressure.
Yeah, make sure you're uploading to the cloud. You have a OneDrive account with your Microsoft Teams account, so make sure that you're putting your files on there.
Absolutely. Jermaine, you had another question? You've got your hand raised.
Oh, I think I can just put it down. Oh yeah, lower it.
You're just friendly. You're just waving. Okay, other questions? See, I was lucky enough to hear a similar presentation at the Graphic Designers Association of North Carolina, or the Association of Graphic Designers, UNC, whatever the acronym for that is. And so I learned a lot of good tips there. But yeah, so we do very much appreciate your time, and feel free to email questions. If you want to email them to me, I can pass them on to Ms. Hennis, whatever works for you. But we do very much appreciate you being here. It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Good luck, everyone. And I look forward to seeing your final result.
Okay.